July 18, 2013. As the credits rolled for The Last of Us, I wasn't too sure what to think. It seemed like another zombie apocalypse story, but I took away something different. A story of human survival. How selfishness consumes not just us as individuals, but humanity as a whole. If a pandemic were to hit United States, would surviving come second to riots or murder? Could we ever trust anyone? 7 years later, June 29th, 2020, after sinking in 29 hours, I finished The Last of Us Part 2, and while the themes seemed different at first glance, ultimately, it was the same. (2001). The fifth console generation ended. Gaming was evolving rapidly, in many unexpected ways. Sega dropped out of console manufacturing altogether. Nintendo signed a deal to bring over Capcom's Resident Evil games exclusively to GameCube, and Sony, with its PlayStation brand, was about to face a new unexpected foe. That fall, while United States faced an unexpected ordeal, video games helped many stay distracted. Final Fantasy X introduced Spira, Dante said hello to demons by pumping them with bullets, and Hideo Kojima launched the highly anticipated Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. Promotional material demonstrated a wide array of new abilities for Solid Snake, hiding in lockers, aiming within a first-person perspective, hanging off ledges, holding enemies at gunpoint. The list goes on. A demo was bundled with copies of Gundam-inspired Zone of the Enders, proving to players what Kojima previewed was real. Almost. Upon release of the final product, players excited to try out MGS2's new mechanics as Solid Snake were given just that, a chance to try out new mechanics as Solid Snake. Sons of Liberty was split into two chapters, Tanker and Big Shell, the former being dubbed by fans as a tutorial featuring Snake. Officially, it's simply a prologue setting up the events of MGS2, but optional for players outside of North America. Unlike the US version, starting a new save prompts this questionnaire, dictating whether you even see that tanker opening, as claiming no experience with MGS1 jumps right into Big Shell, immediately establishing newcomer Raiden as a protagonist, along with cutting Snake's segment entirely. But why? Since Sons of Liberty was developed to be enjoyed by anyone, as a result, glossing over Snake's tanker mission changes little to nothing. Completing Metal Gear Solid undoubtedly provides the sequel more substance, but also gives a feel of over-familiarity. Scenarios unfold very much like Snake's infiltration into Shadow Moses. Characters even. Dead Cell is reminiscent of Liquid's Foxhound, the sit-in appearance of Cyborg Ninja, Emmerich, most importantly, Snake and Raiden. Initially seeming nothing alike, by endgame, both mirror each other quite a bit, which can be said about both games in general. Different at first glance, but in hindsight, are comparable. Hearing many opinions of MGS2, especially around release, was pretty divisive. I don't have any hard evidence to prove this, but it seemed like the new player base loved it, while veterans of the series didn't share that same enthusiasm. Raiden playing a big role in why. Finishing The Last of Us was strange. It seemed to set up an inevitable sequel, yet Naughty Dog had originally claimed otherwise. Was it truly a standalone story? On one hand, if we're to believe it was, after viewing that ending, humanity essentially lost all chances of a comeback. On the other hand, with Ellie alive, an endless pursuit may lie ahead. But which route did Naughty Dog take? Taking place years after his predecessor, Joel and Ellie now reside within the walls of Jackson County, securing a life filled with friends and family. Outside, infected still roam about, requiring patrol units to regularly scout the area. During one mission, Ellie is informed Joel failed returning from his round of patrol. Shortly after seeking out his route, Ellie encounters a squad of ex-Firefly members, murderously torturing Joel, all within the opening hours. And being powerless, Ellie witnesses his death. This was the route Naughty Dog chose. The Last of Us Part 2 showcases anything could take a wrong turn, regardless of circumstance, forcibly making players uncomfortable. With that said, some may dislike decisions made by our characters, from the physical or mental demise of anyone really, to everything Abby. A character leaving me to believe this was developed more so for new players, rather than its existing fan base. As fans, we assume to play as, say, Joel or Snake because isn't it expected? Regarding capturing a new audience, how do you reach one while pleasing an established one? Like Metal Gear Solid 2, Last of Us Part 2 blindsided everyone. If we're to describe how each developer executed their bait and switch, Kojima sneakily withheld footage of Raiden, while Naughty Dog wickedly went out of their way to do the same. Labeled as Part 2 suggests a direct tie to recent events, and considering Joel taught Ellie everything he knew, seeing her front and center gave off this passing of torch feel. While welcome, fans worried Joel was absent during gameplay. Still, last minute, there he was, geared up, ready for action, with initial roles reversed. Seemed like Naughty Dog was giving fans a natural way of following up on their previous journey, yet also provide a reason to start fresh, create a new cast, even if it meant changing the central character. In MGS2, Raiden's mission mimics Solid Snake's, emulating the experience players had with MGS1. In my opinion, seemed as if Naughty Dog also tried to encapsulate The Last of Us magic with Abby. Where Raiden mirrored Snake, Abby mirrored Joel. Personally, I felt Joel's story was about clinging onto life, no matter how difficult things get, while Ellie's touched on decadence, a sudden decline much further than where she initially was. Let's look at these sequences of events. Joel lost his daughter, led an empty, cold life, stumbled onto a kid that unexpectedly gave him a reason to live, devoted himself to protecting them no matter the cost, and found a community to call home. Ellie, assuming we're talking about post Last of Us Part 1, lost her father, went out for blood, and didn't come back, resulting in the collapse of everyone around her. Currently, Ellie's story is, at least to me, incomplete. I guess you can compare Ellie's struggle with the original's prologue. Then we have Abby. She lost her father, led an empty, cold life, stumbled onto a kid that unexpectedly gave her a reason to live, devoted herself to protecting them no matter the cost, and discovered a re-emerging Firefly organization, her home. Sound familiar? When Abby becomes fully playable within the context of what she did or went through, it seemed like an attempt to, in some way, replicate The Last of Us Part 1. From her size to the cold nature of her actions, a lot of her traits are a direct result of Joel. And just as Joel was heartless, Abby may be more so. Then there's this bullet point relationship Naughty Dog created for Abby, and what seemed like a pursuit to recapture what made Joel and Ellie a perfect match. At first, it didn't seem intentional, but when Lev came into the picture, it really felt like a checklist being marked off. After Abby's vengeful mission, she was directionless. Lev was never part of her plan. By a certain point, both are only left with each other. Surprisingly, their differences allowed a stronger connection and understanding of one another. Together, Abby and Lev stand stronger and seem happier than their initial starting point, which is fine, but coming from Joel and Ellie's game, I wish their story was fleshed out more, because at times, it felt rushed. The checklist I was speaking of earlier came off like a winning formula Naughty Dog made for these new characters, or a way for anyone to be so-called memorable. Let's take a look. Bow and arrow, check. Feeling too different, to the point they couldn't relate to anyone. Lev is a trans at odds with religious ideologies. Ellie is immune to the infection. Check. Traumatizing event against someone crazy. Lev's encounter with his mother. While it all happens off screen, it reminded me of Ellie's encounter with David. As he chased her inside the restaurant, she eventually kills him. Lev also kills his mother in self-defense. Check. Ellie and Lev are LGBTQ representations. Check. Lastly, being paired with a much larger figure to give a sense of guardianship. My issue with this list is you can remove Lev from these scenarios, insert someone else, and have the exact same character. Because Lev didn't have character. Feeling different, having a bow, being trapped in a room one-on-one with a nut job, following a big guy or gal around isn't unique anymore when it comes to creating memorable characters. Kratos from God of War was given a bow-wielding son, and you know what? Looking at this list, a lot of it applies too. But in God of War, I felt like I was traveling with Kratos and Atreus through Midgard. Hearing stories with them on that boat, watching a father give his son a pep talk, and experiencing Atreus grow as a result. I guess we just didn't get enough screen time with Lev and Abby together. Am I saying following a blueprint is bad? No, but I am saying without experiencing part 1, I imagine these characters are better? Playing the original, a parallel was present throughout my entire playthrough. I guess naturally as a fan, I'm always going to compare entries within a series. I did it with Metal Gear Solid 2, and I did it again here. I sometimes envy an audience that started with the sequel. With nothing to live up to, their minds are clear of these comparisons. In these cases, I also feel the target audience always benefits first, rather than initial fans. I want to close out by saying this. Tossing aside these comparisons I made, An underlying theme is present perfectly in both titles. Humans are undeniably capable of being selfish. No one's immune to it. In a world where your life is threatened on a daily basis, can you blame anyone for only looking after themselves? Be honest. Would you help a stranger in need knowing they may or may not be plotting a way to kill you? What if you had a family? Joe thought of himself when he killed Dr. Anderson. Ellie refused to accept a new life without fulfilling first her desire for revenge. And Abby killed Joel after he helped her. Last of Us Part 1 and 2 showcase a side of humanity that we see all the time. It's just not as clear until society is tested.